Welcome back to Whole Bible Study with Taddy Noy. If you've been following the story with us, we've come a long way from the creation of the world through the generations of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to the rise of Joseph in Egypt. In the last few chapters, we witnessed one of the most powerful moments in reconciliation in the entire Bible. Joseph revealing himself to his brothers, forgiving them and welcoming his family into Egypt. Jacob has just died after blessing his sons, and now we reach the final chapter of Genesis. So let's read Genesis chapter 50 together. Genesis chapter 50. We're reading from the NIV version. Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph directed the physicians in his service to embalm his father Israel. So the physicians embalmed him, taking a full 40 days, for that was the time required for the embalming. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. When the days of mourning had passed, Joseph said to the Pharaoh's court, "If I have found favor in your eyes, speak to the Pharaoh for me. Tell him, my father made me swear an oath and said, I am about to die. Bury me in the tomb I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me go up and bury my father, then I will return." Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father. He has made you swear to do it." So Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's officials accompanied him, the dignitaries of his court and all the dignitaries of Egypt, besides all the members of Joseph's household and his brothers and those belonging to his father's household. Only their children and their flocks and herds were left in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen also went up with them. It was a very large company. When they reached the threshing floor of Atad, near the Jordan, they lamented loudly and bitterly. And there Joseph observed a 70-day period of mourning for his father. When the Canaanites who lived there saw the mourning and the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "The Egyptians are holding a solemn ceremony of mourning." That is why that place near Jordan is called Abel Mizraim. So Jacob's sons did as he commanded them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah, near Mamre, which Abraham had bought along with the field as a burial place for Ephron the Hittite. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, together with his brothers and all the others who had gone with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did him?" So they sent word to Joseph, saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they have committed in treating you so badly. So please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. I am in the place of God." Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph stayed in Egypt along with all his father's family. He lived 110 years and saw the third generation of Ephraim's children, also the children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, which were placed at birth on Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land to the land he promised an oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." And Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath and said, "God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place." So Joseph died at the age of 110, and after they embalmed him, he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. Now for the deep dive, Genesis chapter 50. Genesis 50 closes the book with grief, honor, fear, forgiveness, and hope. It's a rich conclusion that ties together the entire patriarchal narrative. Let's walk through its major themes and theological weight. 1. The death of Jacob and national mourning. Verse 1 begins not with words, but with a physical act of love. Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him. The Hebrew word wept, weyepek, shows deep, uncontrolled sorrow. This isn't a formal farewell. It's the cry of a son who still carries the wounds of long separation and recent reunion. In verses 2 and 3, Joseph has his father embalmed. This is the only time in Scripture a patriarch undergoes full Egyptian embalming. It's a detail that blends the sacred and the cultural. Joseph honors Jacob's dying wish to be buried in Canaan, but he also honors Egyptian customs. This embalming process, taking 40 days and 70-day mourning period, mirror royal Egyptian funerals. The Egyptian participation in Jacob's mourning speaks volumes. Pharaoh's high officials accompanied Joseph to the burial in verses 7 through 9. This would have been unheard of unless Jacob was considered nobility. His association with Joseph elevated the Hebrew patriarch to a figure worthy of national grief. Even the name Abel Mizraim, mourning of Egypt, suggests that this event etched itself into the memory of the region. 2, burial in the promised land, a theological anchor. Now, Jacob's burial in the cave of Machpelah connects him to Abraham and Isaac, anchoring his legacy in the covenantal land. This act of burial isn't just about family, it's about faith. It's a prophetic gesture. The patriarchs believed the land of Canaan was the place where God would fulfill his promises. The cave of Machpelah becomes a sacred symbol of identity and continuity. And historically, this event reinforces the Hebrews' cultural separation from Egypt. Despite being immersed in the Egyptian wealth, the patriarchal family never saw Egypt as home. Now, 3, Joseph's brothers fear retribution. Now, verses 15 through 18 introduce a deeply human moment. The brothers are afraid. Now that Jacob is gone, they suspect Joseph might finally exact revenge on what they did to him decades ago. Their wounds show insecurity and guilt that never fully left them. In verse 17 is the key. Joseph weeps, not out of anger, but perhaps sorrow that his brothers still don't understand his heart. Joseph's reply in verse 19 is the most profound theological statements in the entire Bible. Am I in the place of God? This is humility rooted in theology. Joseph doesn't just withhold vengeance. He places himself outside of the jurisdiction of judgment. That's God's role, not his. This echoes Paul's words in Romans 12:19. Do not take revenge, but leave room for God's wrath. Then in verse 20, Joseph speaks the words many consider to be the central thesis of Genesis. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. In Hebrew, that phrase, Atem Shabachem Allah Ra'aya Elohim Shavan Chazhava Latova. Now I murdered that, but that's what it means. The same verb, Shabashav, is to plan, to reckon, is used for both man's evil and God's good. That means the very same action, the betrayal, was recalibrated by God to produce redemption. This verse crystallizes divine sovereignty, the mystery of providence, and the redemptive arc that runs throughout all of Genesis. Number 4, a forward-looking hope. In the final verses, Joseph prepares for his own death. He's 110 years old, considered the ideal age in Egyptian wisdom literature. Yet, instead of focusing on his success in Egypt, Joseph looks forward to the promised land. Verse 24 repeats a key phrase: God will surely come to your aid. This double use of the Hebrew pakad, yipakad, is emphatic. It doesn't just mean God will remember, it means he will intervene. Joseph uses this language prophetically, foretelling the Exodus. In fact, Moses uses the same words in Exodus 3:16. This verbal link between Genesis and Exodus is intentional. It shows that the story isn't ending, it's about to expand. Joseph asks for his bones to be carried out of Egypt, a final act of resistance to assimilation. Just like his father, Joseph says, "My story doesn't end in Egypt. His bones will rest in the promised land." This sets the stage for Exodus 13:19 when Moses carries Joseph's remains during the great deliverance. And now for some closing reflections. Genesis began with God creating life from chaos. It ends with a coffin in Egypt, but that coffin is filled with hope. I'm deeply moved by Joseph's grace. He had every reason to be bitter, but instead he chooses faith, forgiveness, and future. He doesn't demand closure. He points to continuity. That's the kind of faith I want to live with. Now, what about you? Is there something in your life others meant for harm that God is reshaping for good? Are there parts of your story that still feel unresolved? Joseph reminds us that God's sovereignty doesn't erase our pain, it redeems it. Thank you for walking through this first book of the Bible with me. If something in today's chapter spoke to you, or if there's something I didn't touch on, drop your thoughts or comments in the comment section. Let's keep the learning going from each other. May the God who carried Joseph through prison, power, and peace carry you through whatever season you're in. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you in Exodus.